Hey, everybody. Welcome to our conclusion lecture of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I hope everyone enjoyed the novel as much as I did. It is a bit of a mess, and admittedly so. I do think it's rather a mess, especially the ending. Leaves a lot of questions unanswered, but I think that's one of the reasons the book is so good because it leaves a lot for interpretation. So, like the past few lectures, I'm going to give a brief synopsis of what happens from roughly chapter 14 to the last chapter. Then we're going to talk about the ending. We're going to talk about Mercerism. We're going to talk about the deal with the toad that Rick finds out in the desert, and we're going to talk about why it ends with his wife having a cup of coffee. So, a lot to be covered. Let me just pull my notes up here. So, I believe, finished the last lecture with the death of Luba Luft, Rick, and the other bounty hunter that he is teamed up with kill her, and Rick now has enough money to buy a real legitimate animal, not an electric one. So he quits work early and he decides to buy a black Nubian goat. He's really excited about this. He takes it home. He's excited to show his wife, Iran. And while this is happening, JR meets the other androids, and not just Pris, but Roy Batty and his wife and Ermgard, and they vote on what to do with him, and they decide that they could have a better chance of making a stand in his apartment if he's there. And subsequently, they turn him into a sort of human slave, basically turning him into what they ran away from initially. And Iran, in the meantime, is very excited about the goat. It cures her depression, but she wants to join with Mercer so she can share her joy with everyone that's also using the empathy box. And downstairs, Rick tells Iran about his newly formed empathy towards androids. He understands why she has such a distaste for the job. And of course, after this really nice husband and wife conversation, he gets a phone call from Bryant, who is informing him that they have a lead on where the last three androids are. So he decides he might as well finish the job. And he also realizes that it has to be done at that point in time, or else he may lose the lead. So let's see here. I'm just going through my notes. Rick uses the empathy box, has a conversation with Mercer. He gets nailed by a rock, and basically he tells Iran about this revelation that Mercer gives him, one that he has already had, in regards to empathy. He calls Rachel to ask for help, and asks if she'll meet him at an apartment. She initially declines the offer, but then does meet him at a hotel in San Francisco. And when they meet, just got my notes up here. Rick, there's a really interesting scene in the book where he has a thought about whether or not androids dream, hence the title, and is interrupted by Rachel as she enters the room. She has a bottle of bourbon. She starts to drink. Rick asks her what upset her, and she basically tells him that one of the androids that he is hunting is the same model as her. Pris is the same model as her, so they look physically very similar, with slight differences, but not very noticeable ones. And Rick wants her to come with him, and she argues that she can't because she's drunk, which I think is kind of interesting that androids actually can get drunk, because you would think that something that a sentient being would be only capable of doing. So they end up going to bed together, and Rachel says that she will retire Pris so he doesn't have to. Um, so afterward, they're driving in Rick's hover car, and he tells Rachel that basically that he's in love with her and that he'd marry her if it was legal to marry an android. And just trying to see here. She kind of, at this point, sort of shows her cards, and makes the statement that he'll no longer be able to hunt androids because he has slept with her. And this is one of those scenes that sort of comes out of left field because it happens relatively fast. But she tells him that because he now has feelings for her, both sexual feelings and romantic feelings, that he'll never be able to kill an android again, and that she's done this quite a few times. So he basically realizes that this whole sort of setup with Rachel is a trap, and that she has known that all along about these androids and the escaped androids, and that she has relationships with them, um, and she also knows that Rick does not have the ability to kill her. So she ends the conversation by saying that the Buster Friendly episode that night will be a very important one. And while this is going on, we have the escaped androids with John Isidore, J.R. Isidore, and they're watching Buster Friendly and his friendly friends. Isidore finds this spider, and it's a big deal because spiders are supposed to be extinct. And as this is happening, Buster Friendly is talking about this major discovery and this major find that he has, and they're all kind of on the edge of their seats. The androids know what he's going to say, but John Isidore doesn't. And all the while, even though he's being exploited, he feels useful, and he likes the fact that he has company. And Pris takes advantage of this, and she really shows this sort of evil, sadistic side to her, and decides that spiders don't need 8 legs in order to move around. So she takes a pair of shears, kitchen shears, and begins cutting the legs off of the spider. And this is a really hard, harrowing scene to read, because when we think about a spider, I mean, how many of us in our lives have killed spiders? They say you're not supposed to, but we all have at one point in time. Maybe you haven't, but I definitely have. Um, and I'm not proud of it, but I have. And it's amazing how Philip K. Dick was able to write this scene specifically about a spider being, tortured, for all intents and purposes, and how it is. You just feel horrible for this little creature, and you also feel horrible for Jr. I mean, he's begging her to stop, but she won't stop. Now, while this is happening, Buster Friendly is in the middle of his expose showing proof that Wilbur Mercer is an actor, and that Mercerism, this sort of religion, is a complete sham. And they start talking about how it's done on a set, and you can see that the moon behind him is just a painting, and it's very, very similar to the conspiracy theories that you hear about in regards to the moon landing. And you got to wonder, all conspiracy theories come from somewhere, and you got to wonder if someone, read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and had that wild idea that maybe this is what they did with the moon landing. I don't know. I saw a correlation there. And obviously Isidore is in shock by all this, and he's also feels horrible for the spider. So he drowns the spider in order for Pris not to torture the poor thing anymore. He ends up going into this, depressed rage, and just crumbles onto the floor. And um, he discovers that um, the spider is alive after that. And I think this is where we sort of realize that maybe the spider isn't a real spider after all, that it's a synthetic one. So basically, after this, it's a fight between Rick and the androids. Rick gets to the building, he kills Pris, and then he kills the other two. It's a very, very quick scene. If you remember the whole sort of uh, ending of the climax of Blade Runner between Roy Batty and Rick is that's the movie. That's the part that people always talk about. With Rutger Hauer's monologue, and how he saves Rick's life, and how it's just like completely different tone set compared to the book. And I mean, I think one of the biggest differences between the two would be that particular scene, because in the book, it's really he just kind of kills the three of them, and that's it. So let's see. I think we're almost at the end here. Yeah, chapter 20. Rick says he'll send a patrol. Bryant tells Rick he'll send a patrol car to pick up the bodies. Isidore tells Rick he's moving into town where there's more people. And when he gets home, his wife tells him that Rachel, a woman basically who is described to a T to be Rachel, actually threw his goat off of a roof and killed it. And I guess she did that almost as a revenge for him killing her friends. So he let's see. Rick, he he's driving his hover car around. He lands his hover car on a hillside, and he ends up finding a toad, which is a really kind of interesting, beautiful scene. And he takes it home, and he's really excited because obviously toads are considered to be extinct. When in reality, he takes the toad home, and Iran finds a little almost like hatch, for the electrical parts of the toad, and so he therefore realizes that it's not it's not a lot, it's not the real McCoy, it's electric, and but he's not that upset by this, which is kind of interesting because in the beginning of the book he's so depressed that he only can afford an electric sheep. However, at the end of the book, he finds this little toad that's electric, but ends up being happy that he at least has that. Um, he goes off to bed. Iran calls up the pet shop and orders a bunch of little electric flies for the toad to eat, fixes herself a cup of coffee, and then the book ends. So obviously it ends in a strange way, I would say. Um, but I think it ends that way purposely because I think Philip K. Dick wanted to leave room for interpretation, right? There's irony, obviously. There's a few different layers of irony. One being, like I said, it was only that morning that Rick was so upset that he could only own an electric sheep, and by the end of the book, he is okay with this toad, and uh, what else? He also, I think at the end of the book, him going to sleep is kind of interesting too because he has to sort of use the empathy, or not the empathy box, the oh gosh, what is that machine called? The mood organ, in order to get the amount of peace he thinks that he needs, because he doesn't think he's earned it. So it has to be sort of, this desire, this feeling has to be sort of artificially programmed into him. Um, and you think about all that he has gone through. I mean, the least he deserves throughout all of this, I think, is a little bit of sleep. Um, Let me see what else here. Yeah, I mean, as far as the end goes, like I said, there's irony. Um, I think that there's a bit of a tongue in cheek moment where the book ends with Iran having a cup of coffee. You have this action packed story, science fiction romp, and it ends in such a mundane way, which also could be, you could look, for example, back at the classical quest endings. I mean, you take books like the Odyssey or Beowulf or Lord of the Rings, where each of these books ends with in these sort of moments of peace. Everything is at peace. Or it settles, or things are settling into an era of peace. And that's what this sort of cup of coffee could represent. Maybe, I don't know. Um, and that's basically it. I mean, that's the story. We haven't really talked about Blade Runner, and I really do hope that you watched it while reading the book because, I mean, obviously the stories are very different from one another, but there are similarities, and then there's moments where either story shares zero similarities. But I think the most important question that the book asks about empathy and what it takes to actually feel and what it takes to have emotion is in both the book and the movie. And if you notice too, the movie, I mean, it's very the whole sort of cinematography of the film is just bleak. I mean, it's dark. You never see sunshine. It almost has like a 1940s noir feel to it, and and the music is very um, uh, contemplative and strange. And I mean, you really, think you feel this sort of post-apocalyptic landscape that these people have had to, you know, in order to live. This is what they have to deal with unless they decide to move to a different colony in outer space. And I think that there's certain things about the film that are better than the book. And obviously, there's certain plot points that I wish they would have used from the book. But I think, for example, like I said, Rutger Hauer's monologue at the end of the film is so beautiful, and he apparently, if memory serves me, he improvised the whole thing, and there's even this beautiful moment where you see a tear fall from his eye. And I mean, what better way to show emotion than to cry, right? So, and he also saves the one person who could actually kill him, who could actually kill Roy Batty. Roy Batty actually saves at the end. He saves Rick Deckard's life. So it's I think the movie in and of itself is a important, and it's a very, very significant artifact to the genre, even if it is different from the book. Um, so also, I would love to hear what any of you thought about the movie, and whether or not you prefer the film over the book or vice versa. I'm always interested to hear that. Okay. And just some one thing that I found very so when talking about science fiction and talking about science fiction theory, there's something called animal studies. And this is sort of an umbrella term, like, um, cyborg theory or posthumanism. And I think that one of the interesting things about this book is the idea of, um, you know, Descartes, the philosopher, and Cartesian dualism. How Philip K. Dick sort of injects that into the book. So what I mean by Cartesian dualism, um, uh, Descartes did not think, for example, that animals felt anything. He thought that they were these sort of, mindless automatons that were just put on Earth in order to serve us. And he believed that. I mean, we're talking about, Descartes. I think, therefore I am. I mean, he's a brilliant philosopher, but he was obviously clearly wrong when it came to the subject of animals. And it's a very interesting correlation, because you can see Deckard. I mean, Deckard is a sort of bastardization of Descartes, and he at one point, in the book, when Rick decides that he can't retire androids anymore, when he realizes that Cartesian claim that androids don't feel pain or feel anything becomes untenable. So that's a cool little nugget of information, if you will. And like I said, at one point in time, people did buy this assumption that animals didn't feel pain or anything. And we, like I said, obviously know at this point that this is not true. There is a whole ethical, dilemma with people who eat meat, for example, or people who don't eat meat. And Philip K. Dick really does a good job touching on this in this book. So, I mean, it just shows you that there's so many layers to a book like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep or any good book. And there's so much to think about. And I mean, we could spend a whole semester covering this book and what we think Philip K. Dick was trying to get across by writing this book. And it's all of his books are like this. I mean, it's really sort of unbelievable. I mean, you read this book or The Man in the High Castle or Scanner Darkly. I mean, all of his books are so just packed with just beautiful symbolism and allegory and just everything you want out of a good book. So if this is the first time you're reading Philip K. Dick, I would highly recommend reading his other books as well. So that's all I have as far as this goes. And hey, we're finished our first book, which is pretty cool. So our next book that we're going to be reading is Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End, which is another book that has a lot of religious undertone. And I look forward to reading this one with you. And next week, you are responsible for doing the quiz that will be posted on Blackboard next Monday, which is let me just get my dates right here. Next Monday, which is the 8th. And also your first paper will be the paper questions will be posted on the 8th as well. And everything will be due that Friday, which I believe is the 12th. It's also Lunar New Year, which is kind of cool. So like I said, if you have any questions, let me know, and take care, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.